Hey there, it's Christian from 7 Gaming Network with an increasingly fuzzy beard. Please ignore that. A bit of a throat, as you can hear, but I'm recovering a little bit from some illness. Anyway, I'm here to show you a deck I've been working on because I'm very excited. Spirit Rebellion has hit on Tabletop Simulator. It's sort of hit in the real world. We've just had the pre-release, but I wanted to show you this deck that I've been playing with because one of my favourite cards in the Awakening set was this one, Crime Lord. And I always wanted to build a deck that was competitive with Crime Lord, and unfortunately in the Awakening set it just wasn't fast enough. You just couldn't get resources together quickly enough, reliably enough to effectively Crime Lord your opponents off the field. I think that's changed because FFG have printed this marvellous character. Now, quite apart from the cool theme that we've got here of Unkar and Jabba, probably I would say one of the more attractive combo teams that you can play in Star Wars Destiny. Unkar Plutt. Let's go through the characters and why we're playing with these two. The reason we're playing with Unkar to enable our Crime Lord is that he's got a +2 resource side. Stop the press. I mean, that's insanely strong in a character that you can have at elite for only 13 points. So if you've got 2 dice that are generating 4 resources just themselves, with others of course because they're modifieds, that's really strong. And in my play with this deck I have been consistently managing to get 3 to 4 resources out of my team in the very first round, and that's what's really important about this deck. It makes its resources potentially very, very fast, and you can see a very early Crime Lord. I have Crime Lorded people on round 1 on several occasions now. So he's also got focus on there, which is helpful for us for things like focusing our Crime Lord die to its special. He's also got these disrupt sides. Not super fussed on those, but of course they can come in handy, especially if you're playing some sort of mirror match. And then he also has this very interesting ability. Now his ability is powerful, but I think really it comes into its own if you get any chance to look at your opponent's hand of cards and you can see they've got expensive cards in there. Now we do have cards in there that can allow you to do that and take advantage of that, and so that's always a possibility. There have been times when I've gone from having just 1 resource to playing a card, which I'll show you in a minute, having a look at the opponent's hand, and then knowing I can gain 4 if I just do his ability, or maybe even more. So now we're pairing him up with Jabba, largely because Jabba's got focus. He's got that black resource side, which will enable the +2s over here in Unkar. The focus is great because it means we can get Unkar's dice to his +2, and of course when we activate Jabba we get to re-roll another yellow dice, so we can re-roll one of Unkar's dice. So we're able to smooth out those the early generation of resources, and it can happen really quickly in this deck. As I said, most usually 3 to 4 resources in the first round. When you're getting +2 at the start, you can see that's quickly building up into a lot of resources. Now they haven't got very much health together at 21, but we do have ways of mitigating that. But let's have a look at the battlefield. Now the reason I've chosen this battlefield is that when you claim it, you can immediately pick one of your die and resolve a special on it. Well, that's fundamentally important when we're trying to Crime Lord people to death, because remember, it's the special on the Crime Lord die that we're trying to get. So what the battlefield allows us to do is to not worry too much about making sure that we have to hit the special side on our Crime Lord die for us to Crime Lord a character on a turn. Now, let's go through another important card in the deck. Nothing as important as Crime Lord, but I wanted to mention Prized Possession here early on, because Prized Possession is one of those kind of cards that can really change a matchup. Now, if you get a Prized Possession off, let's say you're playing Vader Jabba, 1 die Vader, 2 die Jabba, if you can take Vader's die out of the game for 4 resources, that's really good, because one of the other things that I found is that generally it's quite difficult for a Vader Jabba deck to deal any damage if they haven't got Vader in play. And of course the other person, your opponent, needs to do damage to get rid of prized possession, most usually that's how they're going to do it. So that's a really good setup and a really good way to deal with some difficult characters. Maybe you're playing against Poe lots or Luke, or prized possession can really help to slow down the damage and just gain control a little bit. So prized possession is in there really as a way of mitigating damage, because mitigating damage is what this deck certainly needs to do to stay alive. Excuse me. Now, another way of mitigating damage, I'm going to go through the damage mitigation first before all the cool stuff, is this personal shield. Now, personal shield is a really interesting little card. The 2 blanks are a bit painful, but it only costs 2, so that's quite nice and cheap. And we can generate a lot of shields from it. We've got focus, so it's easy to get our shield sides if we want to early game, if we're not seeing our big cards and we just need to stay alive. Not only that, but it's also really great against ranged decks because of this ability on it, where we can tap it to reduce some of the incoming damage by giving our character another shield. So the personal shield really helps to keep us alive. Now, in terms of really cool stuff and what this deck can do, let's have a look at a really nice combo that we can set up with this deck to get a round 1 Crime Lord off. Now, you can actually see this in a gameplay video that I posted just a few days ago. How it actually works, but I'll very briefly go through it here. We are playing the card Infamous. This is a support, and it gives the next yellow card that you play the ambush keyword. Pretty simple. Now, when you pair that with an ace in the hole, we can play ace in the hole, give it ambush, and then we ace in the hole a Crime Lord die. Now, that means that we can then, with our ambush, claim our battlefield and resolve the special on the Crime Lord. You just got to make sure you've got your 5 resources to be able to pay for your Crime Lord effect. That has happened on round 1 on several occasions to me playing this deck. All you need to do is really just have, you can make this round 1 play on ace in the hole and Crime Lord in your hand, let alone with Infamous too. Infamous is, you're probably going to maybe see, if you see that early, you can play it out and kind of set up this ace in the hole Crime Lord play later in the game. But first round, all you need to do is get yourself to 5 resources and have Crime Lord and ace in the hole in hand. So what I tend to do is, if I draw it, great. If I draw an ace in the hole or a Crime Lord in my opening hand, I'll just mulligan the other 4 to see if I can get one of those 2. Now, if you know you're up against a very slow deck, you might not need to do that. But if you're playing against a fast deck, if you're up against a Vader Raider or a Maz Poe or something like that, then hey, you're probably going to need to try and get your Crime Lord off first round if you can, definitely by the end of the second round. And that's very realistic, and I'll show you some of the ways of making sure that this happens. So the ace in the hole play is really, really good, and this is kind of what you're building around. This is super powerful, getting that ace in the hole, because all you need to do is get to 5 resources and you're threatening it with 2 cards in hand, and your opponent has to start playing around that, and that's really difficult. They either need to start holding back removal, so that they can try and remove your Crime Lord, things like Electroshock, although that could miss if you roll the 3 Disrupt. So they have to start respecting this play if you've got 2 cards in hand and 5 resources, and that's partly what makes it really strong. I really like that. Now, the other thing that makes in this set makes this a better, stronger deck is that previously, if you ace in the hole a Crime Lord, you only had 1 left to make sure that, well, if you did an ace and hole Crime Lord again, you had to have some balls to do that, because of course that's your second Crime Lord and it's gone. You haven't got a way of getting them back, but they've printed a way of us getting it back. Okay, we have got the card Cheat. So this allows us to switch a card in our hand with a card in a discard pile. Now, it costs 1, so we've got to take that into account, but generally you're able to use this to get that Crime Lord back, maybe after you ace and hold it early on, or there's quite a lot of mill decks going on at the moment. I think with the new cards that we're going to see that being a very viable archetype now, a mill deck as a way of control. And cheat just allows you to just rescue your crime lords out of the bin, because there isn't any other damage in this deck. Like, you are going to win by crime lord or by milling your opponent. There is some mill in the deck. Now, cheat allows us then to be, well, much bolder about that first turn, ace in the hole play. Ah, well, it doesn't matter too much if we miss it. We can get those crime lords back. So, another really neat trick that this deck can chuck out is an all-in. So, remember, we've got focus on Jabber. We've even got focus on Unkar Plutt. So, if as long as we are rolling in a crime lord die, or we do have cunning in the deck as well, which of course cunning allows us to resolve a special on another card in play. So it effectively gives us other copies of crime lord. All in allows us to, as long as we've got the resources and we hit the focus plus whatever die, it's really powerful. All in for the one, so we need to remember to have 6 resources, but then we can just focus our crime lords die to its special or its cunning die to its special, and then we can resolve that. I mean, there is the potential for really crazy plays late game where you could double crime lord, because with Unkar, you and with Jabber, and with all the other dice that we've got that have got focus on, like Black Market, or that are generating resources like Datapad, or got the special that turns it to another. An absolutely super magical Christmas land play is you can all in and do 2 crime lords, because you can focus, you've got your 5, you could probably quite easily get another 5 resources off the Unkar dice, off your Jabber dice, off your upgrade dice, and then you could, I mean, if you've played out another crime lord, of course you can resolve that, or you could hit your cunning. So I haven't actually done it yet, but that's definitely one of my achievements that I'm going for. Now, another brilliant card in this deck is Bait and Switch. Now, the most common use I do for Bait and Switch is one of the problems with Unkar, of course, is his +2 side. So it's not completely unusual to have that +2 side, or the 2+2 sides showing. And if you bait and switch, you can turn one of his +2 resource sides to a normal side, and then in the ambush you can claim those 3 resources. So that's quite powerful. The other thing is that Crime Lord does, of course, have a resource side on it, so we can bait and switch that and turn it into its special and then ambush it. And also Cunning also has the resource side. So with bait and switch available, that to me makes it feel like our Cunning dice and our Crime Lord dice, that's almost, yeah, the special's there, okay? Making it much easier to ensure that we're getting that Crime Lord off. Okay, so a couple of other cards that we've got in here. So I mentioned about seeing the opponent's hand earlier on, and using Unkar's ability. This card, Friends in Low Places. This is a really great card, guys. Spot the yellow character. That's not hard for us. To look at the opponent's hand and discard an event from it that costs 1 or less. Well, the big thing with this, for me, is that we get to see our opponent's hand, and that allows us to decide whether it's worth us removing a 3-cost something for our Unkar Plutt ability. Now, if it is, you're also discarding a card as well, and that's a good thing. But it's the being able to see our opponent's hand, and it's one of those things where you can either use it early on as a sort of an offensive, almost probe type effect, where you can get rid of the electroshock that might remove your Crime Lord die, or some other, like a force strike if Unkar's at 8 damage. It's that early play that can just help to save a turn potentially. But also you could use it later on in the turn, when they've maybe only got 2 cards left in hand, and you suspect they might have something quite expensive in there, and that's why they haven't played it. You can Friends in Low Places, take a look at it, see whether it is the fact that, you know, they're holding a lightsaber and a one with the Force, and go, do you know what, I think I'll use Unkar Plutt's ability. I'll remove my 3 disrupt that I didn't need to use, or my whatever, and I'll take all those lovely resources, please, whilst you get rid of that very useful card. So Friends in Low Places allows Unkar's ability to really shine, and well, let's face it, that's a really cool theme as well. You've got to love that theme, Unkar and his friends in low places. Now the other cards in the deck, they are, apart from Black Market, which I'll go through in a moment, there are standard sort of removal in terms of yellow, so Electroshock and He Doesn't Like You. Because this deck wants to go fast, you want to be in control of the battlefield. You're not really waiting around here. He Doesn't Like You works better because very early on, the first thing I'll do quite frequently is roll Unkar, because if I roll +2s, I'm more likely to tempt out their early removal plays, and if it doesn't, and I roll a blank with Unkar, well, He Doesn't Like You's on, and that's fine. I've also got Unpredictable in there. This is potential mitigation, of course, but it's also a potential help with getting off our Crime Lord effect. We can Unpredictable roll a Cunning or a Crime Lord die, and then of course we've got Ambush, so great, we can hit it straight away, which is a really nice combo. You can see that the selection of cards here, it is very focused on making sure that Crime Lord happens. We really make resources and make Crime Lord happen. That's really all the deck's about. Now, one of the things that can be a little awkward is, what if you don't see your Crime Lord? That's going to be a problem. So I've got a Singleton Black Market in here. Now this is a card that wasn't really any use in the first Awakening set. It was just too expensive, but in a deck like this that can make quite a lot of resources, becomes really quite good because of that special. We got loads of focus. We can even claim to use the special if we wanted to. Draw 2 cards. You can play an upgrade from your hand, decreasing its cost by 1. Now bear in mind, you could have Crime Lord in your hand, and if you're thinking, I can't quite afford to get it out this turn, because you want to have it played out, you're not trying to ace in the hole it or anything, well, you could do the special. You'll draw 2 cards, well, that's great anyway, and then you can play that Crime Lord, and you're playing it for 1 cheaper, so you're getting a Crime Lord in which is a great die anyway for 3 resources. That's really quite strong. But where this really shines is, if you can't find your Crime Lord, you can dig through 2 cards. Now I had played a previous version with 2 copies of this in, to really get through and find the Crime Lord early if I didn't draw it in the opening hand. But it's also got some other really useful sides on. The 2 shields is brilliant. This meta is quite fast. That's why I've got Personal Shield in there. That's why I quite like Black Market in here with its 2 shields, and that we need that removal in there as well. It's also got the 2 focus, so that's great for things like our all-in, or just making sure we get the resources or we get the Crime Lord result. It's got the black 1 resource on there, which can be helpful for allowing Unkar's +2s to resolve. Now the +2 is in there, which is kind of irrelevant for us. Maybe you decide to play Disarm in your deck. I'll make a follow-on video to this one where I go through a bunch of cards you could include and why you might in this deck afterwards. But let's face it, the meta's all over the place right at the moment as I post this. So some of those other cards might be better includes than what I've got here, but I'll go through that in the next video. But that +2 is nothing to sniff at if you're playing Disarm. So our Datapad, again, this is such a great little card. It's either making us resources, that's what we want, or its special is turn another die to a special basic and resolve it. So that's our Crime Lord, that's our Cunning, and effectively it has that almost ambush effect. As long as we roll the special on that, well, we can resolve all of our specials at once, remember? So I can resolve the Datapad special, turn another die to its special, the Cunning or the Crime Lord, and I can resolve the Crime Lord. So as you can see, I've just designed this to give us myriad ways of making sure we get Crime Lord into play, and then we get it off. It's that simple. So a few tips on actually playing it and in terms of strategy. I generally, first round, roll out Unkar first, let's see what we get. Then I roll out Jabba next, let's see what we get. If I've drawn a Datapad, I'll probably play Datapad that first round, unless ace in the hole, Crime Lord is on that turn. I don't want to use up that one resource on the Datapad. I generally just want to keep it, okay, for trying to do my ace in the hole Crime Lord. And then all I need to do is just try and get myself 3 resources. So I'll be, we can unpredictable, we can discard to reroll. We'll obviously use Jabba's reroll and Unkar's die if we don't get the +2. Just get the 5, and then if you've got it in hand, you can go for the big ace in the hole Crime Lord. Now, if you don't draw that early on, no issue. Kind of the objective is still the same. Make as many resources that first turn as you can. And you also then need to take a look at the deck you're playing against. Now, if you're playing against another deck that you think will be fairly slow and that will give you some time, I'd keep your resources. I wouldn't spend them. If you are playing against a deck that's looking pretty fast, it's a Vader Raider or they've got Luke or whatever, try and get out some form of defense, i.e. your personal shield. If you've drawn it, try and get it out. Keep available your mitigation cards. I didn't actually mention confiscation, but I really would, because you can make resources so quickly with the deck, I would strongly consider keeping a confiscation around for when for when Vader plays a Kylo's lightsaber, if it's that sort of build, or when Luke plays Rey's staff or something like that. Keep the confiscation for then. Use the confiscation after they've rolled, remember, because it's going to remove it. And a nice little combo you can do is a confiscation, and then if you haven't rolled Jabba yet or you've got discard available, you can confiscate and then discard. You could potentially get rid of some nice upgrades that way. But what you've got to be looking and trying to assess: do I need to defend early and put my resources into defending myself, or I've got a bit of time here? I can keep my resources at the end of the first round, because next round I might draw into my Crime Lord ace in the hole combo. That's going to give you then the flexibility to do it. If you played out a personal shield and a cunning on the first round, and then the next turn you draw into ace in the hole Crime Lord, it's going to be much more difficult for you to be able to get off that Crime Lord that round, because you've got to get 4 resources. You've got to get 2 more resources from somewhere, which actually isn't the end of the world of this deck. Unkar makes them so quickly, but if it's unnecessary, then you can see what you draw, and then if you don't draw it, great, you've got loads of resources to start building your board state again. Play at your Datapads, play at your Cunnings, and get ready for it. Just one other thing with Cunning, I think Cunning is it's just an amazingly useful card. Just as an example, Lone Operative, I think you're probably going to see quite a lot of Lone Operative in the game from now on. People will be using it, relying on it, wanting it to do really well for them. And the big thing that Cunning does, of course, is it allows you to essentially have, free, at the cost of a Cunning die, heals on tap. And I think there's quite a few decks will be relying upon that, and they're going to come up against this deck and go, I'm just going to have to overwrite it. I can't use my Lone Operative because I can't afford to keep allowing him to just heal himself all the time. Now, of course, if it's a mill deck that's using it, which is another really good place to be using it, then that's not so much of an issue, but it is something to bear in mind. Okay, so once you've got through that first round, hopefully you're getting yourself loads and loads of resources, or maybe even getting that first round Crime Lord off. It's against a 2-character deck, it's game over if you do. That second round, your aim and emphasis has to be on playing Crime Lord as quickly as you can. There may even be calls for, in the first round, if you don't see a Crime Lord, but you do see Black Market, I'd really consider playing Black Market out in that first round, and then using it special. You should be pretty fast with this deck. You don't want to spend ages doing rerolls. If you don't quite get all the resources, it's not the end of the world, because you can get them next turn. But I'd get that Black Market played, draw the cards, see as many cards as you can, because this deck lives or dies by seeing its Crime Lords and getting hold of them. If it doesn't see them, that's the point of the deck. So you've got to get through your deck, and that's why I really would countenance putting in another black market into this deck in your build. If you're just finding you're not drawing Crime Lords too well, but I'd be mulliganing for it right from the start. You need to get hold of your Crime Lords. So it's really exciting, it's really fun, it's super different, and I think people are playing against it and not really quite sure what to expect. You could easily make builds of this with some big old shooty things in, Slave 1 and big supports and things like that. So people are not quite sure what to expect, and I'm finding a lot of people are doing things like using up dice to put shields on and all that kind of thing. I mean, people get wise to it, of course, as a deck grows in the meta, if this one does. But I think it's a really different deck. People have to play against this very differently. It's either big damage to take this deck down, going all out with big attacks early on, and your Vader Raiders and your Luke Maz and things like that are the threat to a deck like this. And the other way to do it is, of course, is just disrupt lots against it. If you're able to disrupt, that sometimes the one disrupt can make a really big difference between being at 5 resources and 4 resources and whether they can get off that Crime Lord. So in terms of playing against this deck, those are the two things I'd be saying. You either need to go really fast damage, or you need to be disrupting resources any way you can. Anyway, so that's my Unkar Jabber deck. I am tentatively calling it Fast Fat Lords or Fat Fast Lords because this is really, really quick to Crime Lord. If I don't Crime Lord on round 1, then I'm probably Crime Lording round 2 70 to 80% of the time. And really the only time I don't do that is when you don't see Crime Lord, and it's hard to go through 3 rounds without seeing Crime Lord. So it's real, it works, it's a lot of fun, and it's very, very different. I'll do a follow-up video with a whole bunch of other cards you could be using in it and why you might put those in there, but there's the build I've been using for now. Anyway, so if you haven't already, please do check out swdestiny.com. A brilliant site, loads of cool articles and great information on there. They also host 7 Gaming Network videos, so thanks to those guys for doing that. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm on the Knights of Ren Discord channel and Peace Lord on there. It's probably the easiest way to do it, or leave comments on the video. And if you haven't checked out Knights of Ren podcast, do. It is brilliant for sort of real competitive type play discussion. Anyway, there's the Fast Fat Lords. Go and enjoy playing it. And until next time, keep enjoying Destiny.